Jaden Bulldogs with another video. And today we are going to be doing a reaction to the brand new Food Theory video. And this one will be Food Theory. I made the world's best mac and cheese. Let's see and find out if it is really the best. And it probably is. But let's find out. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway. 3, 2, 1, make sure to hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we upload person go live on Jaden Bulldogs. Also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you would like us to react to next. Until the end of this reaction, 3, 2, 1, let's see and find out what this will be about. Let's go.
This is Kraft mac and cheese. And it sucks. Whether it's elbows or shells, no one can really seem to agree on what the best shape is for mac and cheese until today. I've gathered all the most popular pastas that I could find to make a boatload of mac and cheese and figure out once and for all which pasta shape is best for your mac and cheese. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that knows it ain't easy being cheesy.
That's true.
And listen, is there anything better on this bright blue ball we call the earth than mac and cheese? Spoiler alert, no there is not. But every time I make it, I run into the same problem. It never turns out exactly the way I hoped. I mean, it still comes out amazing. It is me we're talking about after all. But every time I make a delicious mac and cheese and I take that first bite, I always find myself thinking it could be better. Which is super frustrating because mac and cheese is 2 ingredients. The cheese, which you can go simple and you...
And also there is another thing better than mac and cheese, life. And that's no cap. Let go.
Spell beat up or complicated and use your own concoction. I tend to use Gruyere, Monterey Jack, and sharp...
Oh well, found the bullshit. Probably not.
Cheddar. But the real troublemaker in this equation is the pasta. Every noodle shape is different. Every single one absorbs and retains cheese at different rates. But if every shape is different, that must mean that there's one that is objectively better than the rest for that golden mac and cheese ratio. So I scoured the internet for 8 of the most popular pasta shapes that people swear by for their mac and cheese. From elbows to shells to the SpongeBob little shapes and even a surprise one, spaghetti, to see which mac is best for cheesing. And as you can tell, we have a lot to get through. So let's get to it. Alright, if we're trying to see which pasta shape makes for the best mac and cheese, then there's no better place to start than with what I like to call the cheesy trinity. These 3 shapes manage to find their way into the vast majority
of
mac and cheese recipes online. I'm talking cavatappi, elbows, and shells. While I get everything ready for the first round, future VO me is going to explain how we're going to pit these pastas against each other.
Okay.
The goal for today is to find an objectively best pasta shape. But that's gonna be tricky because every single noodle holds onto or absorbs that cheesy flavor very differently. One option could be to simply cook up some mac, try them all out, and let you know my favorite. But that feels pretty unscientific and kinda lame. So instead, here's how we're gonna collect some of that ooey gooey data we know and love. If our goal is to find out which pasta shape has that perfect balance between mac and cheesiness, we need to find a way to measure just how cheesy my mac and cheese is. To do that, we're going to weigh our different noodles at 2 different points in the mac making process. Once after the pasta's cooked, and once after we've added the cheese and strained the excess. With those 2 numbers in hand, we can find a cheese ratio and see just how much cheese each gram of pasta holds once it's cooked. That way, when I do rate and eat all these macs, because of course I'm not going to let all this go to waste, we should be able to find that sweet spot where the macaroni and cheese flavors live in perfect harmony. Now, I know not everyone cooks their mac and cheese this way. Come on, what kind of psychopath strains their mac and cheese? But it's really the only way I saw to measure how well each pasta...
Pretty sure some people do, but Look at
retains its cheesiness while still collecting objective data. And speaking of objective data, in order to keep things as consistent as possible, we'll be using the same dry weight of pasta, the same amount of Velveeta cheese and milk, and we'll be stirring and straining our pasta for a set amount of time. With that out of the way, it looks like Past Me has all the ingredients prepped. So, it's time to start macking!
Vlog, except we're coming across some insane deals today. We're at DD's Discounts because you don't want to sleep on DD's. And as a plus size girly, I'm always going to appreciate a store that carries plus sizes. I was finding tons of closet staples for under 10 bucks. And since the weather is getting colder, I'm looking for long sleeves and sweaters. If you're looking for a good deal this holiday season, definitely check out
Yeah, no one cares. Look at
Alright, so we have all three of the cheesy trinity cooked right here. And honestly, I have to say, this is so appetizing. I'm so hungry, and I cannot wait to dig in and try these once we've cheesed them up. But before we do that, we have to weigh them all now, post-cooked. Now, just from the look of it, the cavatappi has gained the most size and probably absorbed the most water, therefore the most weight. But I'm here to be surprised. We're gonna turn on our food scale. We're gonna just tear it up. All right, let's start with
It's always good to be surprised. Okay,
the
look at
elbows, shall we? They're still a little moist. Oh my god. Okay, 118 grams. So we've gained, what is that, 68 grams worth of water here. So that's a massive
Yeah, that's true.
increase. But we don't know that
Okay.
for certain. We have to test the other ones out. So let's switch it out, shall we? All right. We're gonna bloop, 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 bloop. Make sure that there's nothing left in here. We're back to 0. Get in there. Get in there. Get in there. All right. Let's put. Come on. Come on. Don't fall all over the place. Don't be like your little brother. No. There we go. 101 grams. So very surprising that it's gained less weight than the elbows. But let's see how our shells fare. 80 grams. The shells only gain about 30 grams post-cook. So that's not really surprising to me because I feel like there is less pasta here than there is here. These two aren't surprising. What is surprising is the elbows. But it kind of makes sense once you start to think about it because the sheer number of elbows that were in the original 50 grams means that each one gains water. So that kind of exponentially increases. But with that said, it is time to get to cheesing. Let's do this. So like I explained in the video, the way this works is simple. We have two 16-ounce bricks of Velveeta, which means that for each of the 8 pasta shapes we have, we can use 4 ounces. We're gonna plop each pasta shape in that pot over there, strain them in the strainer over there for 1 minute. And in that 1 minute, I'm going to use this spoon and drag it down once and up another time. And that is it. Then we just measure them to see how much cheese each shape retains. So let's get started. All right, so let's open up this brick. Let me tell you, I am bricked right now. We can't use that joke on YouTube. Not with the children. Think of the children. Perfect. 4 ounces of Velveeta cheese. In we go. So I'm letting this Velveeta melt. I'm gonna throw in the elbows. Then we're gonna repeat it for each pasta shape, do the straining, do all of that, and then I'll meet you right back here for the final weigh. So VO me, take it away. By the way, while I was researching for this episode, I happened to stumble upon the fascinating story of how mac and cheese made its way stateside. Admittedly, not a happy story, but interesting nonetheless, and one worth telling. You see, there's basically one man who's responsible for introducing macaroni and cheese to the young United States, and his name was James Hemings. James was born a slave around 1765 in Virginia. At the age of 8, he and his family were sold to future 3rd President Thomas Jefferson. As it turned out, James was very skilled as a cook, and so when Jefferson moved to France in 1784 to become the U.S. representative there, he brought James and had him trained to become a chef. James went on at the age of 19 to study French cuisine under professional chefs, and he even learned to speak French in his spare time. And so, when Jefferson returned to the States in 1789, he brought James and all of his French culinary knowledge with him. Today, James is credited with bringing many French cuisines to the U.S., including his famous macaroni and cheese recipe, which we're flashing on screen now if you want to try. And for those hardcore history buffs whose alarm bells are going off at his last name Hemings, yes, James was the brother of one Sally Hemings, the enslaved woman with whom Thomas Jefferson had at least 6 children. Yeah, like I said, not a happy story. But at the very least, we can thank James for bringing such a goated dish to us here in the US. And maybe a few more people can hear his story. This looks delicious. Honestly, this is glistening in the lights. It's fantastic. I cannot wait to dig in. And we are going to start with our elbow mac and cheese. Ooh, wow, that was satisfying. So now we are going to lose just a tiny, tiny bit of cheese in the receptacles when we dump them into this other bowl, but it'll be negligible, honestly. So we have 179 grams for the elbow mac and cheese. And then we're gonna put it back and give this bowl a little wipe. Oh, man down, man down. So here we go.
Okay.
0 gram. Let's go with the cavatappi. We've been going in an order so far, so we're gonna continue in that order. Boom. Oh, clean. 147 grams. So if I remember correctly, the post-cook pre-cheese weight of the cavatappi was 101 grams, which means it's gained almost half of that weight in cheese. And finally, we have the shells. Oh yeah, that was, we have a couple stragglers. So we have 130 grams here, which honestly is astounding because if you'll remember, the pre-cheese post-cook weight of the shells was 80 grams. So this means that it's gained over half of that original weight in just cheese. Now, should it really surprise anybody? Because the shells have that beautiful big space where they can hold a lot of cheese. Even after we've strained and whatever, they still hold a lot of cheese in there, which I'm sure will taste delicious. And speaking of, it is now time to taste test. Let's go! I'm just gonna keep these in here. All right, so here we have the elbows, the classic mac and cheese shape that everybody and their moms grew up eating, and then you graduate to the other shapes, but this is the OG. So let's see how this tastes. I mean, it's a little cold, but it is delicious. Honestly, you get a lot of pasta in there, I will say. You get a lot of pasta, decent amount of cheese, but I think what really hits your mouth first is the pasta. Wow. It's so good it made my voice crack. What really hits your mouth first is the taste of the pasta, which means that there isn't that much cheese adhered to the actual elbow itself. There's a lot around it, and because it clumps together fairly well, you get a decent amount of cheese. But if I just get one, it's mostly just pasta, not that much flavor. You really need like a decent spoonful here to get that good experience. I mean, I'm gonna go middle of the road here. I'm gonna go with a 5 out of 10. Not for any other reason other than the fact that you do need to get a big spoonful. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but in terms of ratio, you're not getting that good of a ratio. You need a lot of pasta to get that cheese flavor. So 5 out of 10 for the classic. I'm not mad at it. Now, let's move on to the cavatappi. Now, the cavatappi is my personal favorite, but I'll try and remain somewhat objective here. Let me get a couple of these. Oh, man. So, see, again, totally subjectively objective here. When I just get 3 of these bad boys, there's so much cheese that is still wrapped around those coils and in the seams and inside, right? Because the biggest difference, if you look at these elbows, specifically these elbows, it's not the case for every elbow out there. They also have ridges like the cavatappi, right? They have little tiny ridges, little tiny noodle hole, right? But the cavatappi has such a longer noodle that inside you're likely to have much more cheese. And then you have the cheese all around that coil and those ridges. Wow. This to me is a much better ratio, personally, because you're not getting much of a plain pasta feeling, even with just 1 or 2. But if you want to be a savage and load your spoon up, you get a much better influx of cheese. But at the end of the day, this to me is almost perfect. Subjectively, I would say perfect. This is my favorite noodle. In terms of pasta to cheese ratio, I'm gonna give it an 8. Now, let's move on to the shells. Now, the shells for me are not my favorite just because they go in the opposite end of that spectrum. They hold way too much cheese. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when I'm looking at it through this lens. I'm gonna take a nice spoonful here. Wow, that is a lot of cheese. You just get 1 shell. There's like a little pool of cheese in there. So I'm gonna give it a 4, but I'm gonna explain my logic here, all right? Because it's not just because it's too much cheese. What happens is when you're cooking them and when you're stirring them in the cheese, they tend to stick together. So this is 2 shells right here. So what happens is when you get a single shell and you bite into it, blast of cheese, not that much pasta. Then you get a double shell and then you bite into it. The top shell barely has any cheese stuck inside of there, but the bottom shell still has. But now the ratio is all off. So cheese in that one, but the ratio is off. You have a lot more pasta to chew through, and it is a lot more chewy than the others. So with the cheesy trinity done, it's time to move on to our second category.
Ross, haz tu magia.
Kraft mac and cheese. It's almost hard to say mac and cheese without preceding it with Kraft. So over here we have the OGs, which are a lot less elbow-shaped than I recall. And here we have the SpongeBob shaped ones. They've had a bunch of different characters and different character shapes, but SpongeBob was the only one that I could find. And honestly, it's awesome. The one thing that I noticed, I know this is for children, all right, shut up. But I look at the word scramble, and what do they think I am? Some kind of idiot? COBBSEOPN. What else is that gonna be? It's clearly Squidward.
What do they think I am? Some kind of idiot?
So here we have our 50. We're gonna throw them in the pots, get our pre-cheese weight, and go from there. Honestly, the whole idea of boxed mac and cheese is sort of a modern wonder. As I'm sure you know, cheese wasn't exactly always known as a shelf-stable food. And prior to the widespread adoption of refrigeration, keeping your cheese from becoming the wrong kind of blue cheese was a struggle. And there was one man, a Chicago-based cheese salesman, who really racked his brain on how to get cheese not to spoil. He tried putting it in tinfoil, sealing it in jars, and he even tried canned cheese. And surprisingly, to absolutely no one, none of those caught on. But eventually, he realized that if you took cheese scraps, heated them to kill off bacteria, ground it all up with an emulsifier, and sealed it in a can, you could make a cheese product that would basically never spoil. In 1916, this cheese savant would receive the first U.S. patent for his processed cheese. That man's name was James L. Kraft. And his company Kraft Foods, well, I'm sure they need no introduction. In 1937, Kraft packaged a version of their processed cheese with dry macaroni, and, well, the rest is history. All right, so we have our Kraft Max sans the cheese. And I have to say, it's so much grayer than the regular pastas, and I don't know why. Maybe they have more wheat. I will say the SpongeBob pasta is cute, although it's also kind of creepy because they look like skeleton versions of the SpongeBob characters. Like, this is Squidward. He just looks like a skeleton Squidward.
Yeah. That makes sense. Kinda creepy.
Gary looks like he died 30 years ago. But that's not what we're here to judge. We are here to judge the weight. Okay, 113 grams. That's actually incredible because it absorbed more than its original weight in water, more than the dry weight in water. So that's incredible. Let's move on to the classic over here. 121 grams. That is nothing short than incredible. I think this is the highest post-cook weight that we've seen so far. That's insane. That retained a lot of water. With that said, it's time to cheesify these melon farmers. Let's go. Take it away, Vyomi. Speaking of Kraft, yes, despite popular opinion, Kraft mac and cheese is real cheese, just in a very different form. The powdered stuff that gets all over your kitchen counter, despite how careful you try to be, is actually made by taking their patented processed cheese we talked about earlier, turning it into a sauce, and then dehydrating it until it becomes that fine powder that gets everywhere. Okay, we're back. They have been cheesified, strained, and now we're here. So I have to say, the OG Mac took on a nice color. It was very pale at first, but it looks much more appetizingly mac and cheesy. Whereas the SpongeBob ones don't as much. It might be a little hard to see there, but the more wheat-ish color that they had, that was like a little more pale yellow, more brownish, it does not make it as appetizing. But who cares if it's appetizing? What we care about is the cheesiness. Also, I realized, like, I was using a bowl before and, like, wiping it after every round. I could have just used paper plates. All right.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Right. Oh, plickety plop. Wait, because we're gonna get all of it. There we go. 152 grams. And if I'm not mistaken, the post-cook weight was 113 grams. So a decent amount of cheese holdage, but we'll have to see the numbers after. Right now, we're moving on to the OG Kraft Mac. Let's go. Look at this. Ready?
Character mode. Insertion point of
Oh yeah, 171 grams. I think, don't quote me, I think this has been the most cheese retention in terms of just raw weight of cheese, but we'll have to see the actual ratio in a second. But now it is time, my friends, for the taste test. Let's start with the SpongeBob, shall we? So again, remember, this isn't just about taste. You know, the quality of the pasta might not be as good as the others. We don't care about that. I'm trying to determine the pasta to cheese ratio here.
Yeah. Okay.
Just how it tastes on the tongue. This is a mouth experience right here. That was my nickname in high school. Okay, this is interesting. This is so interesting. I'm gonna do a couple back and forths. Ready? Ready? Hot take. I think this is the best cheese to pasta ratio. Don't get me wrong, the flavor of the pasta is not good, but you're getting a lot of cheese that's stuck in the crevices, right? Which, like, trust me, I'm not a fan of cheese from crevices, all right? But here, I kind of am. This is a 9 out of 10. And I'm only not giving it a 10 out of 10 because it's very soft. I don't think
Yeah. That makes sense.
anything is gonna be better than this. Moving on to the OG classic Kraft mac and cheese. From a mouthfeel experience, I'm getting way more pasta than I am cheese. Like, there's not that much cheese that clings on for dear life to the pasta. The holes of the elbows are so small that barely any cheese can actually get in there. It's a lot more pasta. I'm missing that cheese. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. I think this might actually be the worst so far from a mouthfeel experience.
Yeah.
It feels like way more pasta than it does cheese. This feels like a lot more of a better balance between cheese and pasta. It is up there from a mouth experience. I really wish a non-Kraft brand would make characters like this, and maybe they do. I just haven't seen them because this, honestly, cracked the code. But we still have 3 pasta shapes to go, and this is sort of the weirdo round, the miscellaneous round, the round of pastas that you don't normally see in mac and cheeses. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't. I was actually very surprised to see some of them on this list. So, with that said, let's move on. All right, so for our final bucket, or I guess we should say bowls of mac and cheeses, we have a few wild cards. Now, these are not typically the noodles that you see people reaching for when they're making mac and cheese, but they are extremely popular in a lot of other pasta dishes. And let us not forget, in the immortal words of Aaron Hansen from the Game Grumps,
Everybody loves mac and cheese. Chicken Alfredo, mac and cheese. Lasagna, mac and cheese with some meat in it. It's all mac and cheese, dude. Rigatoni, well, that's just a noodle, but if you put cheese on it, then it becomes mac and cheese. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I see where you're going with that. We can't be
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's true.
bogged down by our preconceived notions of what mac and cheese is or should be. So let's put these noodles to the test. Because listen, after all, we might actually have been sleeping on spaghetti as the true heir to the mac and cheese throne. So let's get to cooking. I have rigatoni, rotini, and spaghetti. Let's do this. Okay, so we have our perfectly al dente pastas over here. Once again, we have the rigatoni, the rotini, and spaghetti. So we're gonna start with the rigatoni. Okay, so we have 81 grams in the rigatoni, meaning it's only gained about 31 grams of water weight here. Fairly solid start. I think that's on the lower end of all the other ones. But the one thing we have to keep in mind is these are big, chunky pieces, right? So they're actually going to be quite a bit heavier because this is thick, chunky pieces of pasta. Let's move on
Yeah.
to the rotini. So here what's fascinating is that we have 81 grams yet again. It's interesting, despite there being many more rotini here than obviously in the rigatoni, they've gained around the same water weight. Smaller pieces, but literally 81 and 81. So let's see if we can keep it going with the spaghetti. Okay, so 93 grams for the spaghetti. I'm not that surprised that spaghetti is longer, so there's more water to be absorbed. There's more pasta for water to be absorbed into. Now the question remains, which one of these is gonna be the mackiest and the cheesiest? let's get to it. You know, there's one last macaroni thing in pop culture that we have to address. Something that's always bothered me growing up. There's this old American nursery rhyme called Yankee Doodle that honestly never made much sense to me. It goes, Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. And look, I get that this Yankee Doodle probably wasn't the smartest guy, but I
That's true.
don't get how one could mistake a feather for this. As it turns out, the song has nothing to do with delicious pasta, and instead has to do with fashion. Oh no, I said it. Amy, no, get out of here. Get out, shoot. This is my time. You see, this song dates back to the
Okay.
American Revolution, when pasta and Yankee Doodle made much sense to me. It goes, Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. And look, I get that this Yankee Doodle probably wasn't the smartest guy, but I don't get how one could mistake a feather for this. As it turns out, the song has nothing to do with delicious pasta, and instead has to do with fashion. Oh no, I said it. Amy, no, get out of here. Get out, shoot. This is my time. You see, this song
Okay.
dates back to the American Revolution, when British soldiers used it as a means of making fun of the Americans, or Yankees as they called them. However, in the most famous of the many verses, macaroni refers to a style of dress that was popular at the time. It was very elaborate, bordering on comical. So the line isn't meant to imply that Yankee Doodle can't tell the difference between plumage and pasta, but that the Yanks were so uncultured that they think a little feather would count as high fashion. I guess the modern version, for all you Gen Zers out there, would be something like stuck a feather in his cap and called it super drippy. Nailed it! Anyway, back to some real macaroni. Okay, so we're ready to weigh our final contestants, our final noodles. And I just want to clarify something for you watching, in case you're like trying to point out all the flaws in this experimental design. We did make sure that all the plates that these are on weigh 17 grams. So when we tear it, it will account for all of them. We've weighed all the plates individually. They all came in at 17 grams. So just to keep that in mind. Now, let's get started with the rigatoni, shall we? 110 grams. That's an increase of almost 30. That's not bad. That's you know, it's not good, but it's, you know, it's respectable. Let's move on and go with the rotini. 118 grams. Remember, these two weighed in post-cook weight at the same exact weight. But the rotini has clearly held on to a lot more cheese. But what I'm really curious about is the spaghetti. All right, let's put this on. 133 grams. This is a very respectable increase. But now there's only one more thing to do, and that's taste test all three of these. I'm gonna get, like the others, get a big bite. Here's the problem. The rigatoni has massive holes. And the problem with that is that it's not easy to trap cheese inside. Looking inside of these, there's nothing in there. Sure, the inside is coated, but it's not really holding on to any cheese. In terms of everything we've tasted so far, this has been the worst ratio. I'm actually gonna say a 1 in terms of the ratio. Let's move on to rotini, shall we? Much more cheese there. The cheese gets nice and stuck. You can even see it. It kind of gets stuck in between those spirals. And it gives a good cheese in it. I would actually go with a 7 out of 10 here. But now, the potential black horse in this race, mac and spaghetti. No, wait, spaghetti and cheese. Oof, it's been a second. It's kind of all congealed up. You know what? I'm just gonna hold up.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Let me put some cheese up in it. Ooh. Bear with me here. I don't know what I used to clean that, but it's wet. This is actually weirdly good. It's a lot of pasta, and you have to get a lot of noodle. It's not the most convenient thing to eat as a mac and cheese, especially because the cheese, as you can see, kind of congeals a little bit if you leave it out for too long. They kind of stick together, so in sticking together, you get a lot of cheese clung between 2 or 3 or 4 or more pieces. I'm gonna be bold and put this at a 6 out of 10 for me. If you make this mac and cheese to share, it's not the best. You have to make a lot of pasta. Few noodles don't do the trick. You have to make a lot of noodles, a lot of spaghetti. As a mac and cheese dish to take to a party, probably a 4 out of 10. Maybe even a 3. But if you're just making mac and cheese for yourself, this might go up to a 6. So I'm gonna split the difference here, give it a 5 out of 10. With that said, it's time to calculate all the weights, all the everything to see which noodle actually reigns supreme. The results for this little excuse to eat mac and cheese and leftovers for 24 hours straight were fascinating, because the difference in weight after we coated the 8 pastas and the cheese only told half the story. Elbows held on to the most total cheese and weight, an incredible 61 grams, while rigatoni came in dead last with 28 grams. No surprise for me there, I gave rigatoni the worst score of the day with a 1. But what about the cheese ratio? Taking the amount of cheese gained and dividing that by the weight of the cooked pasta, we can find out how many grams of cheese per gram of pasta each shape held. So looking at elbows, which retain the most cheese, putting it through our patent-pending cheesometer equation, we get 52%, meaning that elbow pasta holds cheese equal to 52% of its cooked weight. Our top three shapes for this were cavatappi, nabbing the third place with 46%, elbows getting the silver with the 52 I just mentioned, and the cheesiest shape for the gold medal was the shell, holding cheese equal to a whopping 62.5% of its cooked weight. If you're aiming to make the cheesiest mac and cheese you possibly can, then shells should be your go-to. But what about my subjective scores? This to me was actually the most interesting thing. I gave my lowest score to rigatoni, and I gave my highest score to the SpongeBob shapes. Odd thing is, they both had the exact same cheese ratio of 34%. Not exactly good. In fact, the lowest by far of the day. So how did these two get opposite scores? Well, it all comes down to cheese distribution. I hinted at it in my tasting of the shells, but mac and cheese isn't just about the cheese. It's how that cheese is distributed in and around the pasta. I wasn't the biggest fan of shells because despite them holding the most cheese, the experience is worse when you get flooded with massive globs of it. The SpongeBob shapes do a lot with just a little cheese. The holes in the shapes, which again make them look spooky, trap cheese all along the pasta shape, giving a nice, even experience while not making it too cheese heavy, at least to my taste. So if you're looking to make mac and cheese, whether it's to chow down for yourself or for a holiday party, shells are your choice if you want a cheese-tastic explosion in your mouth. Elbows are a classic for
I mean, that's true.
reason. But if you want to elevate the experience while losing minimal cheesiness, cavatappi is a good way to go. But if you're looking for a good mouthfeel and mac experience, the craft shapes are goated for a reason. Let me know which shapes you prefer and which shapes I should try if I run this whole thing back in the comments. And as always, remember, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And if you want to see me test my culinary skills on something besides mac and cheese, click the card on screen to go watch me trick my friends with fake Taco Bell menu items. And as always, I'll see you next week.
Es Nochebuena en la casa García Quién. Están todos los quienes y sus amigos también. Tamales en la mesa y los regalos están ready. Pero
Oh no, se me olvidó el tío Freddy.
Tranquila, Walmart tiene regalos increíbles y Express Delivery.
Problem solved. ¿Quién diría?
y uno pensaría colorín colorado. Pero esta historia no ha terminado.
Okay, this will be
This
the
is a team
end
feeling,
of the
Zen.
reaction.
And these are the Dell Power Edge servers that make them feel that way. They take care of themselves. So the team can spend less time stressing and more time growing their business.
If you like the reaction, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you want us to act next. What do you think? What mac and cheese do you like? All these, let us know. And what did you think about our reaction? Let us know as well, Dayton Bulldogs. If you like the reaction, hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we upload. Personally, love on Dayton Bulldogs. Until next time, Dayton Bulldogs, and we are out.